I never thought my own daughter would leave me alone on Christmas night. But what she didn't know was that by morning, the whole world would be talking about my house. Before you watch this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and tell me, where are you watching from? Because what happened next changed the meaning of Christmas forever. My name is Helen. I'm 63 years old, and this Christmas was supposed to be special. Maybe not perfect, just warm, familiar, filled with laughter again. It was the first Christmas since my husband, James, passed away last spring. I told myself I wouldn't let grief steal this holiday too. I had plans, real plans. My daughter Claire and her little boy Noah were supposed to come stay with me for the weekend. We talked about it for weeks. Every call ended with her promising, "We'll be there, Mom. It'll be just like old times." I clung to those words like a child clutching a gift. I pictured it all. The smell of cookies baking, the sound of Noah's giggles as he tore open his presents, the three of us watching those same Christmas movies James and I used to watch with Claire when she was a little girl. The memories of her tiny hands hanging ornaments on the lower branches of the tree still made me smile. In the days leading up to Christmas Eve, I made sure everything was perfect. I cleaned the house twice over. I hung the stockings, one for each of us, above the fireplace. I even hung one for James. Not because I thought he'd need it, but because it felt wrong not to. I wrapped every gift with red and gold paper, each ribbon curled just right, each tag handwritten with a little note inside. To Claire, because you still make me proud every day. To Noah, Grandma loves you more than all the stars. Small words, but they meant everything to me. That morning, I woke up early. I made cinnamon rolls just the way Claire loved them. The smell filled the kitchen, warm and comforting. I poured myself coffee and looked out the window. Snowflakes drifted lazily through the air, covering the street in a thin white blanket. Everything looked magical, quiet, peaceful. I thought, this is going to be a beautiful Christmas. By noon, I expected a call from Claire saying they were on their way. But the hours passed and my phone stayed silent. I told myself she was busy packing, maybe getting Noah ready for winter. The boy was only 6. Getting a child that age dressed for winter was no small task. Still, by evening, my chest felt heavy with a strange unease. The clock passed 6, then 7. The house stayed painfully quiet. The only sounds were the faint hum of the heater, the ticking of the wall clock, and the soft crackle from the fireplace. I looked at the presents under the tree, bright and hopeful, and felt a lump rise in my throat. Finally, I reached for my phone and called her. It rang twice before she answered. "Hi, Mom," she said, her voice a little rushed, distracted. I smiled in relief. "Oh, Claire, thank goodness. I was starting to worry. When are you leaving? It's starting to snow." There was a short pause, then a sound in the background. Music, laughter, clinking grasses. My heart sank before she even said the words. "Listen, about tonight, we can't make it. Something came up." My hand tightened around the phone. "What came up, honey? It's Christmas Eve." There was muffled talking on her end, and then she sighed. "We decided to go on a little last-minute trip to Aspen. Tom booked it last night. I didn't want to tell you because I knew you'd worry about us traveling." For a moment, I couldn't speak. "Aspen?" I repeated quietly. "You left town?" "Yes, Mom. It's just for a few days," she said, almost cheerfully. "I'll call you tomorrow, okay? We'll video chat. Noah can show you the snow here. It's gorgeous." I blinked, staring at the fireplace. the flames flickering gently, throwing shadows across the ornaments James had loved so much. I said, "Of course, sweetheart. Enjoy yourself. You deserve a break." "Love you, Mom," she said quickly before hanging up. I lowered the phone slowly, staring at the screen until it went dark. My reflection stared back. A tired old woman sitting in a room full of decorations, surrounded by silence. The laughter from her end still echoed faintly in my ears, cruel in its distance. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked outside. Snow was falling harder now, blanketing the world in white. The neighboring houses glowed with warm yellow light, silhouettes of families inside, laughter spilling out. A little boy across the street was helping his father build a snowman. They looked happy, whole. I pressed my hand against the cold glass and whispered softly, "Merry Christmas, James." The words broke something inside me. My voice trembled as I said them again, quieter this time, like a prayer. "Merry Christmas." I turned back to the living room and stared at the table where I had set 2 extra plates. The cinnamon rolls had gone cold. The candles had burned halfway down. Everything looked ready for a celebration that would never happen. Trying to hold myself together, I turned on the TV, hoping for noise, for company. The cheerful voice of a Christmas host filled the room. Coming up next, the best family movies to watch this holiday season. I muted it. I couldn't bear to hear laughter from strangers. I sat down on the couch, pulling the blanket around my shoulders. The warmth of the fire didn't reach my heart. I picked up a framed photo from the side table. Claire at age 8, smiling with missing front teeth, holding her father's hand. I traced their faces with my finger. I said, "She used to love Christmas. She used to love me." Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, the house grew colder and emptier. Hours passed in silence. At one point, I thought I heard the phone ring, but it was just the wind rattling against the window. Around 10 p.m., I made myself a cup of tea. The kettle's whistle echoed through the kitchen, a sharp, lonely sound. I sat at the dining table staring at the steaming cup. My mind drifted to memories. I remembered the Christmas James proposed. He hid the ring in a small box under the tree, pretending it was a chocolate truffle. When I opened it, he laughed nervously and said, "Well, I figured you deserved something sweeter than candy." I smiled faintly at the memory, my eyes glistening. I said, "You'd be disappointed in me, James. I couldn't even keep our daughter close." The clock struck 11. I thought about calling Claire again, maybe just to say goodnight. But I stopped myself. She was probably laughing, surrounded by friends, holding a glass of wine, not thinking of her old mother sitting alone. I walked to the window again. The street was empty now. The snow sparkled under the streetlights. Somewhere far off, I heard faint Christmas music playing. Silent Night. The irony made me laugh softly. Silent Night, I said under my breath. How fitting. Tears slipped down my cheeks without me realizing it. I wiped them away, frustrated with myself. Stop it, Helen. Don't ruin Christmas by crying. But the truth was, I already had. Near midnight, I turned off the lights, leaving only the Christmas tree glowing softly in the corner. The ornaments shimmered, reds, golds, silvers. I thought of how Claire used to insist on hanging the angel on top. She would stretch her little arms up, standing on tiptoe, and James would lift her just high enough to place it perfectly. I walked over to the tree now, touched the small porcelain angel gently. Its white wings gleamed in the glow. "You remember those days, don't you?" I said softly, half to myself. half to the ghosts of my family. Then, for the first time that night, I let myself cry. Not the quiet kind of tears that slip away unnoticed, but the kind that come from deep, aching loneliness. The kind that make your chest hurt and your breath hitch. I sank onto the couch, clutching a pillow, sobbing until I couldn't anymore. When I finally calmed down, the fire had burned low. Only a few glowing embers remained. I pulled the blanket tighter and whispered again to the darkness. Maybe next year. The words hung in the air, unanswered. And as the last spark in the fireplace dimmed, I realized this was the first Christmas in my life that felt like it didn't belong to me anymore. Outside, the snow fell silently. Inside, an old woman sat alone, surrounded by memories, and the soft hum of a heater that sounded far too much like a sigh. It was Christmas Eve, and I was invisible. The next morning, I woke up to silence again, the kind that wraps around you like a heavy blanket. The sunlight filtered weakly through the curtains, catching the tiny dust particles in the air. I stared at the empty chair across from me at the breakfast table, the one where Claire used to sit, chatting about everything from her job to Noah's school projects. I could almost hear her laughter, that soft, melodic sound that once filled the house. But today, there was only the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the snow pile up outside. The world looked beautiful, pure, untouched, the complete opposite of how I felt inside. My phone buzzed once, a message notification. My heart lifted for a second, but it wasn't from Claire. It was a notification from a local news app. Winter charity feature. Local families donate to the homeless. I scrolled through it absently until a headline caught my eye. Local businesswoman buys historic property for new development. My heart skipped. The photo below the headline showed my own house, my red-bricked, ivy-covered home. I blinked in disbelief, my breath catching in my throat. My house? I clicked the article, my hands trembling. The text loaded slowly, painfully. It read, "Businesswoman Claire Parker, CEO of Parker Interiors, has purchased the historic Oakwood estate for $2.4 million to renovate it into luxury cottages." My blood ran cold. My daughter had bought this house, my house. But how? Why? I hadn't signed anything, hadn't agreed to sell. My name was still on the deed, wasn't it? I dropped the phone on the table, my hands shaking uncontrollably. Memories of my late husband filled my mind. How we'd bought this place together, brick by brick, saving every penny. I couldn't breathe. I grabbed my reading glasses, fumbling through drawers for the house papers. The folder was there, but when I opened it, my heart sank. Some pages were missing. The deed transfer form, gone. I sank into the chair, staring at the empty fireplace. My daughter had taken my home. The same daughter who used to run through these halls in her Christmas pajamas, asking if Santa had come. I wanted to believe there was a mistake, that maybe she bought another house nearby, but the address in the article was clear. It was mine. The walls seemed to close in around me. I couldn't stay still. I grabbed my coat and keys and drove straight to her office downtown, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The receptionist smiled politely, unaware that my entire world had just collapsed. "Is Claire in?" I asked, my voice shaking. "She's in a meeting," the woman said. "Can I take a message?" "Tell her it's her mother," I said firmly. A few awkward seconds passed before the receptionist made a call. Claire appeared minutes later, elegant, composed, wearing that confident smile that once made me proud, but now it only made me ache. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I held up the phone, the article still glowing on the screen. "What is this, Claire? Why does it say you bought my house?" Her expression shifted, guilt flickered, then vanished behind a polite smile. "Mom, it's complicated. I was going to tell you." "You were going to tell me?" I repeated, my voice cracking. "You sold my home, your father's home, without even talking to me?" "Technically, Mom," she began. "The house was in both of our names since Dad passed. I just finalized the transfer. It's for business." My mouth went dry. "Business?" "Yes," she said quickly, her voice trembling now. "You live alone in that big house. It's falling apart. You deserve something smaller, warmer. I'll buy you a condo, closer to downtown, near Noah's school." "Stop," I said, my hand raised. "You think this is about convenience? That house was my life, Claire. It's your father's memory, our memories." Tears filled my eyes, but hers stayed dry. "You can't live in the past forever, Mom," she whispered. "I'm doing this for you." I laughed bitterly. "You did this for yourself, for your company, for your image." She flinched, but said nothing. People in the office glanced over, pretending not to listen. I turned and walked out before the tears could blind me completely. The cold air outside hit me like a slap. My heart felt heavy, hollow. I drove back to the house, my house, and sat in the driveway for a long time, staring at the walls that once echoed with laughter. I didn't go inside right away. I just sat there, wondering when my daughter had stopped seeing this place as a home and started seeing it as a transaction. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floor, every rustle of wind against the window reminded me that this place might not be mine for much longer. I sat on the couch, clutching an old photo album, my late husband's smile frozen in the yellowed pages. He had built this house with his bare hands. I could still see him sanding the staircase railing, laughing when the paint dripped onto his shirt. I whispered his name softly, as if he could still hear me. "James." She sold it. Our daughter sold it. The fire had gone out hours ago, but the ashes still glowed faintly. My mind replayed every moment with Claire. Her first Christmas, the dollhouse James made her, the time she cried because her snowmen melted too fast. When did she grow so distant? When did business start to mean more than family? My phone buzzed suddenly. It was a text from her. "Mom, please don't be upset. We'll talk tomorrow. I promise this is a good thing." I stared at the words until they blurred. Good thing. The phrase echoed in my head as I looked around the dimly lit room. The ornaments on the Christmas tree shimmered like tiny ghosts of the past. I stood and walked to the window, watching the snow fall thicker now, blanketing the world outside in white. For the first time, I didn't feel warmth in its beauty. I felt trapped, like I was standing in a memory that refused to fade. The next morning, I decided I wouldn't go quietly. I went to the county records office, determined to find out how the sale had even gone through. The clerk, a young man barely in his 20s, clicked through his computer with bored detachment. "Yes, ma'am," he said finally. "The deed was transferred 2 weeks ago, signed by both owners." My stomach dropped. "Both?" I whispered. He nodded, showing me the scanned copy. My signature was there, my name written neatly next to hers. But I hadn't signed anything. "This is a mistake," I said sharply. "I didn't sign that." He frowned. "It's digitally notarized. Looks authentic to me." My hands trembled as I clutched the counter. My daughter had forged my signature. The world tilted for a second. I had to grip the edge to steady myself. "Can I get a copy?" I asked quietly. He nodded, printing the documents. I folded them carefully, slid them into my purse, and walked out without a word. The cold hit my face like a wave, but I barely felt it. I went straight to my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white.
The betrayal burned deeper than I could describe. She hadn't just sold a house, she had erased a lifetime. On the drive back, my thoughts spiraled. Maybe she didn't mean to. Maybe someone else handled the papers. But no, Claire was smart. She knew exactly what she was doing. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw a black SUV parked out front. Two men in suits were measuring the porch. One of them looked up. "Mrs. Parker, we're here for the pre-renovation inspection. Miss Claire said we can start next week." I felt my throat tighten.
"Not yet," I said coldly. "This property isn't ready for anything." The man frowned. "We were told the sale was final." I stepped closer. "I don't care what you were told. Not while I'm still living here." My voice shook, but I didn't back down. They exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable, then muttered something about coming back later and left. I stood on the porch watching them drive away, the weight of everything pressing down on my chest. Inside, I sat by the window again, staring out at the snow. I didn't cry, I just felt hollow. The kind of emptiness that comes when you realize love doesn't always mean loyalty. Later that evening, I poured myself a cup of tea, my hands still trembling. I turned on the news, hoping to distract myself. But fate wasn't done with me yet. The local channel was running a story about upcoming luxury developments in Oakwood. There was my house again, my daughter smiling proudly beside it, talking about revitalizing old memories into new opportunities. The reporter praised her vision and innovation. I stared at the screen in disbelief. The place where my husband's laughter once lived, where Claire took her first steps, was now her publicity stunt. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned off the TV and walked upstairs. My husband's old study still smelled faintly of cedar and ink. I sat at his desk, pulled out his old fountain pen, and began writing. "Claire, you've broken something you can't rebuild. Not the walls of this house, but the trust between us." The tears came then, unstoppable, falling onto the paper. I didn't know what I'd do next. All I knew was that I couldn't stay silent anymore. The next morning, I woke to the sound of footsteps on the porch. For a moment, I thought maybe the men had returned to start the renovations. But when I peered through the window, my heart nearly stopped. It was Claire. She was standing there in the snow, hair messy, eyes swollen like she hadn't slept all night. She was holding something, a newspaper. I didn't open the door right away. I just stood there, watching her breathe out little clouds of frost. She finally knocked softly, her voice trembling. "Mom, please open the door." Slowly, I turned the knob. She looked up at me, guilt written all over her face. "You saw the news, didn't you?" she whispered. I didn't answer. I just stepped aside, letting her in. The warmth of the house wrapped around her, and I saw her shiver, not from cold, but from shame. She looked around, eyes landing on the Christmas tree, the unwrapped gifts, the photos on the mantel. "Mom, I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said quietly. I folded my arms, my heart pounding. "You forged my name, Claire. You sold this house, the one your father built. How could you?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I thought I was helping. The house was falling apart. The taxes were too high. You kept talking about money being tight. I thought if I sold it, you could have a fresh start." I shook my head slowly. "A fresh start? By erasing your past?" She looked down. "I didn't think you'd ever forgive me if I told you first." I turned away, my throat thick. "You're right about that," I said softly. Silence filled the room, thick, heavy, and painful. She took a step closer.
Mom, please, I can fix this. I'll get it back. I'll talk to the buyers. I laughed bitterly. You can't buy back trust, Claire. Once it's gone, it's gone. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing quietly. For a moment, I saw the little girl she used to be, the one who used to run to me after scraping her knee, the one who believed Christmas was magic. I wanted to hug her, to tell her everything would be okay. But I couldn't. Not yet. Why didn't you just come home? I whispered. She looked up, eyes red. Because I was ashamed. I didn't want to see the kind of person I've become. I closed my eyes, the ache in my chest growing deeper. Then maybe it's time you see what you've done. I walked to the window, pulled aside the curtain, and pointed outside. That view? That yard? Your father planted every tree here. Every nail, every tile in this house has a memory.
And you gave it away. She followed my gaze, her lips trembling. I can get it back, she repeated weakly. No, I said firmly. You'll let it go. And you'll live with what you've done. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the crackling fire and the ticking of the clock. Then she said softly, Mom, you're on the news again. I frowned. What? She turned her phone around. The local channel was replaying the same segment, but this time something new had been added. A reporter stood outside our house explaining how public outrage had erupted after viewers learned an elderly widow had been living here when the property was sold without her knowledge. My name flashed across the screen. My photo. My story. The comments scrolled fast. Strangers offering help, people condemning the sale. Clara covered her mouth, horrified. Oh my God, she whispered. They know. I just stared, stunned. I hadn't told anyone. Someone must have leaked the county documents. Maybe the clerk, maybe one of the developers. But in that moment, I didn't care how. It was out there now. The truth. Claire fell to her knees, crying. Mom, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was doing something good. I crouched beside her, resting a trembling hand on her shoulder. Then do something good now, I said softly. Be honest. Not just with me, with yourself. She nodded through tears. Later that day, the doorbell rang again. It was a local reporter asking for an interview. I almost turned him away, but something inside me said this was my chance. Not for revenge, but for closure. I sat by the window while he set up his camera. Claire sat beside me, her face pale. When the camera light blinked red, he asked, Mrs. Parker, what would you like to say to your daughter? I looked straight into the lens. That forgiveness isn't easy, I said slowly. But love means giving someone the chance to earn it, even if they broke your heart. Claire started crying beside me. The interview aired that night. It spread faster than I could have imagined, online, on social media, everywhere. People called me brave. Some offered donations. Others shared their own stories of betrayal and forgiveness. But what mattered most was what happened after. A week later, the buyers canceled the sale. They said they couldn't, in good conscience, take away a family's legacy. The house was returned to my name, free and clear. When the papers came in the mail, I just sat there holding them with shaking hands. Claire stood behind me, silent. Finally, she whispered, Mom, I don't deserve your forgiveness. I turned to her. No, I said softly, you don't. But you have it anyway. She broke down completely then, falling into my arms. For the first time in years, I felt something lift. A weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying since James died. We sat by the fire that night, side by side,
the glow of the Christmas lights flickering softly around us. Outside, snow fell again, covering the world in white. It was quiet, peaceful. Mom, next year, can we start over? I smiled faintly, brushing a tear from her cheek. We just did. The clock struck midnight, Christmas Day. The house that almost became a stranger's home was alive again, with laughter, warmth, and second chances. And for the first time since my husband's passing, I didn't feel alone. Not because everything was perfect, but because, finally, we were honest. Sometimes the hardest Christmas miracles aren't found under the tree. They're found in forgiveness. And that night, as the snow kept falling and the world outside slept, I whispered softly to the empty room, "Merry Christmas, James." She came home.